You're listening to the Future Tech Health Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Until I reached age 40, I never realized the obvious, that we all have medical issues, or we at least have a family member or close relation that had, has, or will have them in the future. Medicine and biological systems are the final frontier. Until we've conquered death, figured out how life began, cured cancer, and understood our purpose in the universe, there's a heck of a lot to talk about when it comes to our health. Future Tech Health means I'll be covering futuristic topics that are actually already in clinical trials, or even starting to appear on shelves or by prescription, or available for your own use. We dive deep into stem cells, CRISPR-Cas9, the science of sleep, epigenetics, medical testing, cancer, ketogenic diets, stem cells, aging, regenerative medicine, and more. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a serious medical problem. Remember, however, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and share it with friends. Thank you. Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Future Tech Health Podcast. My guest today is Teresa Rebelo Pinto. She's at the CENC, the Lisbon Sleep Medicine Center. So, Teresa, thanks for coming. How you doing?
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Richard.
Yeah. So I just spoke to one of Teresa's co-workers there, Katia Hayes. Teresa, what's your particular focus on sleep? It looks like you work with adolescents and developing kids. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So I'm a psychologist, and I work also as a psychotherapist and as a sleep psychologist and sleep consultant. So my work is mainly in the clinic, but also with the community. I work as a consultant for schools and for companies and for non-profitable organizations that ask for my help related to sleep interventions.
So what ages of kids do you work with typically?
Well, I work mainly with adolescents in the clinic, and it's a very critical age regarding sleep habits and behaviors. But in schools, I have worked since kindergarten until the university. So sleep is like it's important in every age, of course, and we think also it's also important to develop sleep education strategies since early childhood, but especially in adolescents that usually represents a big challenge for sleep.
Yeah, why? What happens with adolescents? I think people probably assume, oh, kids sleep great. You know, they just lay down, they fall asleep, they have no issues. But what's the reality of it?
Okay, so it should be like that. So if we let them sleep, maybe they could sleep better. But the reality is that we're seeing more sleep problems in early childhood, mainly because, well, sometimes there are sleep problems and people don't recognize them, so they don't ask for help and they get worse. And people should know there are some important sleep disturbances during childhood that need for help. But in adolescence, there's like this, it's the big storm, as Mary Carskaden once, she's a big researcher in the sleep field, and she calls the adolescents the big storm. And the problem for sleep is that there are so many developmental changes in their biological rhythms, and adolescents have later sleep times, so they internally their sleep clock uh, is telling them to go to bed later, and then the school starts time is earlier and earlier, so they are giving less opportunity to sleep, so they sleep less during the weekdays, and then they sleep more during the weekends, and this is a terrible habit.
I have 3 kids, and it's a fight to get them to go to sleep. But so first of all, with kids, what their chronotype is later. They prefer to go to bed later, but how much later? What would be an ideal sleep time for an adolescent, you think?
Okay, so children are more like a morning type and early type, and then during adolescence we start to have later chronotypes, and that difference could it depends. It's different from person to person, but I think maybe if you have enough sleep, you can shift your sleep timing maybe 2 hours later or something. But the thing is, you should always think about at what time do you have to get up. And the thing with adolescents is because the society is organized like that, they still need to wake up early. So
Mm.
you need to balance and try to get enough sleep. And with adolescents, the case is they should sleep at least 8 or 9 hours per night, and every night, not only on weekends.
Well, I would
So
guess school start times are probably very difficult. They cause problems, right?
yes, they are a challenge indeed, and also examinations in 8 a.m. For instance, in Portugal, sometimes they have exams very early in the morning or tests, so it's very difficult to guarantee successful rates or grades in schools when they are being evaluated so early in the morning. So something we could do is to reschedule examination timing, for instance, if you cannot change school start time.
Yeah. What are the school start times in Portugal?
It's between 8 and 9, but
Okay.
they become earlier with age. So
Right.
that's the opposite of our chronotype that becomes later.
That's better than the U.S. In the U.S., the start times sometimes are 7:30 or 7 o'clock, but it's
Yeah,
super
I
early.
know. I'm aware of that. But also in Portugal, we have everything very late. Okay, so it's usually to have dinner around 9 p.m. or sometimes 10. So everything is very late. People go to bed very late. It's usually to have adolescents wanting to watch TV programs until 1 a.m. in the morning or later.
Mm.
So it's true, it's not so bad comparing to the US, but also our habits, our lifestyle is very, very late.
I think I should move to Portugal because I'm like a serious night owl. I probably love it there.
Well, I'm sure you would be great here.
So if you can't intervene in school start times, what can parents do to help their kids sleep better? What should they do?
Okay, so first of all, everyone should enjoy sleeping, and sometimes children and adolescents don't like to sleep because they think it's not worth it. They have so many things, so many other interesting things to do, and sometimes the case is they have no idea what happens during sleep, so they don't know the importance of sleep. And I think adults may be more concerned with this and maybe more aware of the importance of sleep. So to start, I would say that it's very important to raise awareness about the importance of sleep and explaining children what happens, because I mean their brain is so active during sleep time, and many of them don't know that.
I try to explain to them, you need to sleep and this and that, and they'll say, "Oh, I can't go to sleep. I lay there, I can't fall asleep," or you know, it's funny. There was even a book I got edited by Samuel Jackson called "Go the Fuck to Sleep," and I played that for them, and they just laughed instead of like, bedtime stories don't seem to help. It actually seems to make them like more active and more alert. So I just wonder if there's strategies to help them fall asleep faster. Do you just lay with them and kind of talk, or what do you recommend would work?
Okay, so I recommend strategies that help you to slightly turn off from your daytime activity. Okay, so maybe you can choose better the stories to read at night, or maybe you can read before and save some time to do something else immediately before going to bed or turning the lights off. So you have to think about physiology, emotions, and cognitive and thinking, right? So
Right.
everything that stimulates your thoughts, your emotions, positive or negative, and your body is bad for you at night. So you should reduce lights. You should decrease emotional content, even in during storytelling, right? So stories at bedtime are great, and they are a great moment to connect with children and to give them comfort, because it's also important for sleep. The notion of comfort and security, right?
Right.
So bedtime stories are great, but maybe you need to work with the content of that stories.
What do you mean, like tell them boring stories, like read the dictionary to them, or read like psychology manuals, or what should you do?
Well, I'm not sure about manuals, but maybe something that allows them to enter in their dreams, something that stimulates the dream content. So it's like, this is the first part of your dream, the story I'm telling you about. And now you need to sleep and see how it all turns out during your dreams. Okay, for instance.
Okay. Is there a particular author or there particular stories that you think are super helpful for some reason?
Well, I think that's very personal, but we in Portuguese, we also translated it for English. There's this book where the sleep mechanisms and sleep functions, like hormones and stuff, are characters, and so it's a funny story, because it explains you what happens in your brain and in your body when you're sleeping. So you have like the growth hormone who is telling you your body to grow during sleep. You have your memory working. You have your learning abilities. Uh, you have your body temperature working as well. So every sleep mechanism is a character, and they appear in order, like it happens during your sleep. So you sleep in cycles, right? So everybody has to appear in the right time during the night, and that's a funny story to tell them, because it's not because it's boring. I think the story is not boring, but I think it helps them reassure that they can go to sleep, and it's a good investment. It's a good investment to protect sleep and to go to sleep early, and to sleep everything you need and not less, to make your day become easier and happier, you know?
I guess you could also tell them positive stories versus like horror stories. That would probably keep anyone awake, but maybe positive stories with happy endings. Maybe that's why the structure of the children's stories are like that at all. I don't know. Maybe they were the people that made them years ago somehow knew that a certain story with a happy ending would put people to sleep and make them, have a better sleep. I don't know.
I usually ask them, what story do they want to hear? And we also have here in Portugal an amazing project in hospitals, where we volunteers go to pediatric units in hospitals, and read bedtime stories to them to help them sleep better, because in hospitals the sleeping conditions are very friendly, as you know. And I am a volunteer at that project, and I usually ask them, what stories do they like, or what story do they want to hear. I think that's the best way to guarantee that the story is good for that children for that night.
Okay. What
Just
about
ask.
the same story versus different stories?
I think both strategies may be useful, because the same story, it's useful because you need to repeat the same story. You need to read the same story over and over again to understand different parts of that story. So it's very important to hear the same story a few times in a row. A different story is also interesting, because now they have something new to think of, right?
Mm.
And it's important to be stimulating, but not so much that they don't want to go to sleep.
Is it any recommendation? Is it good to read to them in the bed when they're laying there, or is it better to sit and read and then they go lay in the bed? Because some sleep people say that you should only associate the bed with sleeping and other stuff for adults, but for kids, how do you make sure the bed's only associated with sleep?
I don't think there's any problem reading in the bed. So with children, I think it's best if they are already laid down and preparing to go to sleep. So sometimes they will fall asleep during your story, and that's okay, no problem. I think that means mission accomplished. But I think with children, it's best if they are already in bed, and if you use the bedtime story as a specific mark of going to bed, because sometimes the case also with adults is, and especially with adolescents, is that you go to bed and you don't go to bed to sleep. You go to bed, you bring your cell phone, you bring your laptop, you watch TV, the television. So you use the bed for everything you do during the day or things you should do during the day. So with children, I think it's okay if they go to bed and if you read them a bedtime story in the bed, but it's important that you look at that story as something to go to sleep and not something else.
Right. Are there any other, I don't know, any other practices to help kids? I mean, we didn't even get into it, but what kind of problems do adolescents have? Do they tend to have a lot of insomnia? Do they have night
Yes.
terrors?
Insomnia is the most prevalent sleep disorder with adults and also with adolescents. But in adolescents, we have the delayed sleep phase disorder, which is the one I was talking about previously. So it means that they have their sleep timing delayed regarding sunlight. So in children, we have behavioral insomnia. So they refuse to go to sleep, or they have afraid of going to sleep. And we have night terrors and sleepwalking, and that's it mainly. But also we have sleep apnea, which is a severe respiratory problem, and that it happens also with children. So they should look into it. So if you think your children is sleepy during the day, during daytime, or is with mood changes, swings. If you notice something awkward in during the night with her breathing, or some screamings or crying, something very bizarre or unusual, you should ask for help. Or if your children doesn't like to go to sleep, and if it's a challenge in a way that she's not sleeping enough, you should ask for help, because there are some behavioral and also some medical strategies that can be useful.
Do kids? I'm surprised that kids have apnea. Do they ever have like CPAPs for kids, or do kids get treated differently than adults?
It depends of the apnea. So most of the times with children, the problem is with the morphology of the face and the respiratory airways. So sometimes the strategies with children are surgical, but sometimes, yes, you have CPAPs and something like that, adapted for children, yes.
Kind
Children.
of like myofunctional therapy, where they do exercises, to strengthen their throat, their tongue.
Well, it could work also with children, but you need to know first what type of apnea and why do they have apnea. Because if you have apnea because of your upper airway morphology, you need to work on that. But if you're just having overweight or different stuff, so you need to work also with losing weight and different lifestyles. But it's very important to make the right diagnosis first. But with children, most of the times, it's problems with their amygdalas or their tongue, because they're very big or something like that. So you need to remove them or to make a surgery to correct that. It's the most common situation with children.
Okay. What interventions, I don't know, can society or government do, if any, or is it really just at the individual parent level where they can make change, or is it at the school level?
Mm-hmm.
What are suggested? If you had your way and everyone would listen to you, what kind of changes would you make at, let's say, the school level, the parent level, maybe even the government level?
Okay, so with the parent level, I think parents should be aware of how sleep works and They should be able to promote the most sleep-friendly environment back at their homes. So first give the example, because many parents want their kids to sleep, but the parents don't sleep well. So I think the example is very important. And then to be attentive to their sleep patterns and to look for help if needed. In schools, sleep is not part of the school curriculum, and it would be very easy to include sleep in biology or even in different fields. You can work with sleep. Okay, so if you think that sleep is related to everything you do in school and with every subject you study, you can work from different perspectives. And teachers in Portugal, our experience is that teachers from math, from exercise, from music, teachers from Portuguese even, they have worked with sleep education in these different subjects. So it's possible to look at sleep and to study sleep through different perspectives in school. And I think that would be a great challenge to teachers to insert sleep in their curriculum. Also, the society. I think society should be more sleep friendly in general, because nowadays, apparently, you're smarter if you don't sleep well or sleep when you're dead and stuff like that. And in Portugal, we have Cristiano Ronaldo from football, and we use him many times as an example, because he's considered the best football player in the world, and he values sleep a lot. So it's something that we usually say to our teens, is that if you want to be successful, please sleep and sleep well, because you are only going to be successful if you sleep right.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important message to everyone.
Any great examples of programs in schools or other programs that are having a big effect on people, positive?
Well, we have seen some programs around the world, and in the US, there have been many initiatives, also with volunteer projects in the community, with distributing pajamas and bed kits to children in some social difficulties that many times don't have they don't have a good sleep environment. That's an example, a good example, I think. It's called Beds for Kids, I think, the initiative. And well, here in Portugal, we had this Sleep Schools project. It was a national program, and we developed this model that could represent an easy tool for parents and teachers to look at sleep-related factors and routines, and to correct what was wrong to healthy sleep practices. And it was very impressive, because students from kindergarten until the university, as I was saying before, were very participated with very enthusiasm in this program. And so everybody was asking us to go to schools and to give them the tool so they can use it and to reach better sleep practices. And it was very effective. So most of the students didn't know there were sleep problems. For instance, they thought, well, everybody sleeps poorly, so
Really?
they had no idea there were sleep disorders. So we explained what was an insomnia, what were the consequences, and they had no idea. And also, they have no idea about how sleep works. They think they can sleep less, and then they would sleep more than the next week, and
Like
that's
catch
okay.
up. Yeah.
So they have misconceptions about sleep mechanisms and functioning, and it was very helpful to help also teachers to learn about sleep, so they can ask their students questions. So our experience was that we had teachers organizing, for instance, the sleep marathon, and the case was not to who was sleeping more during one night, but the case was like who would respond to more correct answers regarding sleep or something like that. We had debates and everything. We had plays, books that students wrote about it, but everything was made and proposed by students. So we would guide them through some sleep content, and then they would ask questions and propose something to do about that to raise awareness, for instance, with younger students or something like that. So it was the results were very good regarding raising awareness, and I believe also in changing sleep behaviors.
I would think you work mostly with parents, right, that are concerned about their children's problems.
Well, we also worked with parents, but the case was that parents also had many questions about their own sleep. So
Okay.
of course, parents are also worried about their children's sleep and asking what could they do to improve their children's sleep. But the thing is, I think most of the parents don't have also so many good sleep practices. So that's why what I was saying, that it's a good starting point to work with parent sleep first. So make the parents sleep good, and then I think it's easier to help their children sleep better.
Oh, you found that by helping the parents first, that works better than just going for the kids?
I think it goes in both directions. You know, I think looking at their children's sleep is a good starting point for them to start valuing their own sleep also. So it's like
It's true. Like if you're a parent and you're not sleeping well, you're sleeping okay. Well, first of all, you'll be a better parent if you sleep better because you'll feel better.
of
You'll be
course.
more patient and everything. But I guess once you have sleep problems and you go through an intervention and you feel better and you sleep better, then immediately it would occur to you, oh, I better make sure my kids are okay because they seem to be grouchy like I was.
Exactly, I think that's the case.
So do you have like, does the whole family come in and you talk to them all at once? Or do you individually counsel the children or the parents, or, what seems to work best?
Usually, it works best a one-to-one appointment. So even if I need to go with different persons in the family, it's better if I work first with children and then with parents, and sometimes in the end I can get them all together. But the intervention I'm used to is in the clinic, so it's better if you work separately. But sometimes there are persons who go to people's home, and they make an intervention with the whole family, and sometimes in people's home. But I'm not used to use that kind of approach. I think when people come to my clinic, it's best to work in children with them alone, because if you are alone with them, you can work better with what are they afraid of? Are they having nightmares? Are they afraid of dying during their sleep or something like that?
Do kids think that a lot? That they'll die during their sleep?
Yeah, sometimes that occurs to them, and I think
Huh.
it's a healthy thing to think about. But it's worse if you don't have a good answer for that. So if you become very frightened of that, maybe you can have fear of going to sleep. Yeah, but you can work with that. And children are they learn very easily. So if you give them comfort, and if you help them through their fears, usually they respond well.
That makes sense. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's an interesting thought because I've worried about dying in my sleep a few times. Not a lot, but
Hmm.
I haven't thought about that in a very long time. So interesting. Yeah, there was a movie here in the States like 20, 30 years ago called Nightmare on Elm Street. This guy, Freddy Krueger, would, go into people's dreams and kill them. And now that I think about it, it was probably a horrible thing for people's sleep back in the day. as are probably all horror movies. But
well, dreams are wonderful to think about because, and I say that a lot to children. In your dreams, you are always the hero. So that's the main point. You can do whatever you want, and we actually think that the function of dreaming is also about that. It's for you to be able to experiment a different reality, like some place where you can try different strategies for the same problems, you know. So if you
sure,
dream with something that scares you, and sometimes you awake during that nightmare, right? And you don't want to go back to sleep because you're afraid of going back to that bad dream. We work with children and explain them how to change the dream end. So if you are the hero in your dream, what would you like to do in your bedroom? Okay, and something great apparently. So most of the times they have brilliant ideas, and children are very creative, and you just need to work with their own ideas, you know, and just help
that's
them
very cool.
transform them.
Okay, very good. So what's the best way for people to get in touch and to find more about the sleep center, and to get counseling or get help? What would you recommend? How should they get in contact?
Well, I think online there are many information nowadays. So if people look for sleep consults, they can very easily find some sleep specialists nearby. Here in Portugal, there are a few medical doctors specialized in sleep, and it's very important if you look for sleep specialists because sometimes people um, know some kind of therapy for sleep, but they are not sleep specialists, you know, because sleep is a very complex area and it involves many different biological, behavioral, and social issues and family issues. So you should look for medical doctors or psychologists or other clinicians, but there are sleep experts, and you have American certifications and you have European certifications. Here in Portugal, we are still very early in those certifications, but you have a few specialists that received certifications from the US or from the European Research Society, Sleep Research Society. So you should look for them. I think it's very useful because if you have one technique for sleep, like one recipe, it's very it's dangerous because you need to evaluate sleep complaints and sleep problems in a deep way and in a way that sometimes those persons that know one technique for going to bed and sleep right away, I usually don't recommend those people because they use the same recipe for everybody, and
Right.
you need to do a proper diagnosis, and sometimes they misdiagnose, for instance, a sleep apnea because they treat a children's sleep complaint also always like an insomnia, and sometimes they are having troubles breathing during the night, and if you don't have a sleep background, you don't know how to evaluate that or to recognize that pattern. So I always say to people that sleeping is a survival function. So your body knows how to sleep if you let him sleep and if you give him the proper conditions. So if you respect your schedules, if you don't have many sleep disturbances like electronic devices and stuff like that. But still, if you are having the right conditions and you still have troubles going to bed or sleeping with quality, I suggest you go and ask for help as soon as possible. Otherwise, your sleep problem will just continue to get worse and worse, and it's not worth it.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, Teresa, thanks for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I hope I could give you some insights about the importance of sleep education since early childhood. And thanks again for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
You're listening to the Future Tech Health Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Until I reached age 40, I never realized the obvious, that we all have medical issues, or we at least have a family member or close relation that has, or will have them in the future. Medicine and biological systems are the final frontier. Until we've conquered death, figured out how life began, cured cancer, and understood our purpose in the universe, there's a heck of a lot to talk about when it comes to our health. Future Tech Health means I'll be covering futuristic topics that are actually already in clinical trials, or even starting to appear on shelves or by prescription, or available for your own use. We dive deep into stem cells, CRISPR-Cas9, the science of sleep, epigenetics, medical testing, cancer, ketogenic diets, stem cells, aging, regenerative medicine, and more. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a serious medical problem. Remember, however, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and share it with friends. Thank you.